What up, Chosen family? It's your boy, Michael Terpak, aka Ball and Beautiful, come to you live for another edition of Chosen Live. I am excited about tonight. I have one of my favorite people in the entire world, in the planet. He actually has more hair than me, which I don't know how this happened. He's actually younger than me, too. Good guy. You're going to see him in a second. I'm super excited to introduce you guys to him. If you're watching this live in the chat, can you put an L? If you're watching it live, put an L. If you're watching the repeat, you can put R. But I love you guys. I'm so grateful. I'm very, very pleased with the response of the Chosen Live series. It's been a ton of fun. Two, it's been great to kind of communicate with people and just hear some feedback and kind of how it's touching people's lives. But I did get feedback that you guys are like, dude, shorten the intro, bro. So I'm going to shorten the intro. We're going to hop right into it. I have Dr. Ram Nayar. I call him Dr. Nayar. He is my mentor. I love the guy. We have incredible history together. We went to Guatemala together. He's 32 years old. 32 years old. Just kidding. He's going to laugh when he gets on here. He is 32 years old. I love this guy. He is 6'10". Dr. Nair. He is my mentor. He is my friend. He calls me his adopted white son. So you guys will, when he comes on, you guys will see the resemblance. But I'm super excited to have him on here tonight. We've done incredible things. He taught me personally how to love people. He taught me what it means to be generous. He taught me how to have a good attitude, how to persevere, how to never give up. There were so many times where in my life, I literally wanted to quit. Like I wanted to give up, and we'll talk a little bit about a bottle school project that we were doing. But I remember I walked into his office and he spoke life into me and he believed in me. And he said, son, I will mentor you and I'll lift you to higher heights. And so I think it was 2017 maybe that we went to Guatemala together. We built schools actually out of bottles. I'll show you guys a video in a bit. But he's absolutely incredible. I want to bring him to the stage, aka online, aka Dr. Nayar. How are you doing, my friend?
Very much,
Hold on. I muted you. How are you, Dr. Nayar?
I am doing very fine, Michael. It's such a pleasure to see you. My goodness, you are awesome, and I'm glad that you're doing well and you are very happy and you seems like, extremely energetic and positive thinking. And that is wonderful to see that attitude in you which you have always had, and so I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yes, I'm grateful to have you on as well. So when I was first thinking about doing this series, you were like the first person I thought of. I'm like, I have got to get Dr. Nayar on here. Have to. And so I'm super excited. It actually blesses me because I don't think that even how much you mean to me and how much you touched my life and impacted me and believed in me and poured into me and invested in me. And sometimes in life, you just need somebody to believe in you. And sometimes you just need a mentor to believe in you. And so I'm always so grateful whenever I think of you. My heart just fills with gratitude. So
thank you, Michael. You are too kind and too generous. And I think you are giving me a lot of credit. I don't know whether I deserve all that. But I tell you one thing. I want to tell you, I want to start as a quick quote I thought was very appropriate at this point for us to share with everybody. It is about actually generosity, and it says it is a quote from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry in The Little Prince, and the quote was very touching to me, and I thought that is what connected you and me with the same type of heart we have. And so I want to read that quote for you. The quote says, "It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye." When you are a radically kind person, you see with your heart. Seeing with our heart offers us an opportunity to make what is often invisible visible. I thought it was a wonderful quote. In other words, It is the heart that connects the people, nothing
It is.
else. Yeah.
Yes.
A very
Yes.
powerful statement, I thought.
I love that. And it's funny too, because I guess that kind of leads me into, my first question for you, because we always had a heart connection, always. Like I remember uh I remember walking into your office, and I walked in, and you greeted me with like this huge, like joyful attitude, and like this big smile, and from there we kind of just hit it off. Like we in some ways became like very, very good friends, and obviously we had a mentor mentee relationship, which was great. But um so talk to me about, the whole one. Did I teach you English? Is that I just I thought that we should start there, because this is always an inside joke
Yeah.
between you and I. So can you tell them that story of like why why I taught you English?
Michael, yeah, that's a very funny story, really, because I don't know whether you remember or not. You and I were driving towards some community project site in Daytona Beach, and on the way, you just asked me, "When did you learn? When did you learn to speak English?" And I said, "From kindergarten." And then after that, I said, "Michael, you taught me English. If it is not for me, I wouldn't be speaking." That is because I think there is a misconception again. That leads. Even though it is a funny thing, Michael, that tells us something about it, isn't it? In other words, we have, just not in this particular case, as people, in this world, which is actually shrinking. The world is shrinking in the sense that internet connectivity and the world is
Yes.
mobilizing in a totally different way than when I was born and raised in a different world. So you can imagine that we think of other nations as not this. We don't know much about other nations. Let us face it that way. Even if you read a lot, you still
Mhm.
don't know exactly the people. You and I know that because when we went to Guatemala for that bottle school project, what did we see?
Yes.
See, we saw a people so different than in our mindset we had
Yeah.
before. You see, not in terms of material things, but in the real life things, their generosity, their kindness, their smile, their they are very poor, but their living conditions, but still they are the happiest people. That is what I thought. So,
Yes.
Michael, that's what it is. So that joke of learning the English language actually brings back to me thoughts like this, saying that we sometimes presume things which are not real, and until you come to know each other very close, then you start for the first time. Wow, I
Yes.
wasn't really. That's why travel, Michael. That's why you became so broad-minded. You became
Mhm.
so generosity, love, kindness to all people. You know why? Because you traveled. You traveled to the remote places where no one else would go. You didn't go for a vacation. You went to help others. So
Yes.
therefore, I think you should be very proud, and I am very proud of you. And I'm positive that your parents, as well as anyone who knows you, knows your
Mm.
heart, and that's where it all started. So yeah, the English was a funny thing.
We were I actually remember now. We were driving to a bottle school presentation,
That's
and I
right.
was trying to think. I'm like, I literally asked you the question. I'm like, Dr. Nayar, when did you learn English? And he's like, Mike, I learned it when I was a kid. Like, what are you talking about? But there was just, I love looking back at, our friendship, and just the different memories that we had and stuff like that. I'd love for you to kind of share very briefly a little bit about you, big picture. You have an incredible like testimony just about your life, and um, what it looked like when you were younger, and some of the struggles that you went through, and stuff like that. I'd love to hear a little bit about your background, and then even a little bit about like how we met and the bottle school stuff, and we can go into that. But I'd love to hear from you about that.
Well, I was born in India in a state called Kerala, Kerala, Kerala. It is the smallest state in India and one of the most beautiful states, almost like Daytona Beach weather. One side is completely ocean. The entire state is lined with the ocean on the west coast, and on the east we have mountains. And so it's a wonderful weather, lots of rain, lots of rivers, beautiful trees. and it is one of the best states in India, which is very small. That's where I was brought up in a middle class, I would say maybe middle class family. And my dad and mom, they raised 6 children, and I am the second of the 6 children. And we had education as the primary thing, and my dad himself started from a school teacher position all the way to become a dean of a university, and later on served in the UNESCO. And still, as children, we don't realize how our dad was, how much he impacted his students and others. Only after I came to States, when he passed away in 1984, and when it came to his 100th birthday in India, in that state, they had a centennial celebration. That was in 2015 or something, and every year, they give lots of scholarship for poor children in my dad's name, and that's how I brought up. And he was my model, hero actually. And when I came to States, I came I had already a master's when I came to United States in 1970. I completed 50 years in this country now, and this is my home. And I did a second master's degree at Roosevelt University in Chicago, and then a PhD at Howard University in Washington D.C. And then I started working at a research lab called Microbiological Associates in Bethesda, and had some experience working at the NIH as part of the Microbiological Associates program. And then I worked on a geomet technology company. And after that, in 1984, I got laid off because there was a mass laying off because of federal government funds that were coming to our company for doing the contract work. So 3 years, I did not have a full-time job, and I was struggling by doing some 5-6 jobs. I refused to collect unemployment, and instead I did all kinds of menial work up to, and then finally continuously I worked 7 days a week, almost 12 hours, 18 hours sometimes. And then one of my friends in Florida, who was a graduate student with me, he called me and said, come over and I will find you a position at Bethune-Cookman University. That time it was called Bethune-Cookman College. And that's how I came to Florida in 1984. And then I went 10 years, I worked with Bethune-Cookman University, and then I went to Daytona State College in 1994. So,
and that's when I taught you English.
Yeah,
so that's when that's when I was starting to do the English lessons. Did you know, by the way, I was born in 1993.
Okay.
And you started at Daytona State in 1994. That's kind of cool. Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And how long have you been? How long were you a professor? How long did you teach? What subject did you teach? Just for everybody to.
I have been teaching for over 40 years or 40 plus years because before even coming to United States, I was teaching at a private college in India. And then I came here, and after getting the second master's and the PhD, then I taught at Bethune-Cookman University for 10 years and 23 years at Daytona State College. So basically, almost about 40 years of. But I was not completely teaching all the time. I was doing what you call as mentoring as well as research. And mentoring. I not only mentored college students. I actually mentored middle school and a few elementary school and middle school and high school students who came to my laboratory to do their science research and science methods and things like that. So mentoring has been always a part of my life, and research was also a great part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I met you.
Yes.
You walked into my office just like that.
Like randomly just walked into your office, Yeah, so I guess I'll kind of bridge the gap. So I went to Daytona State. I think I moved to Daytona 2014-ish, around that, like 2013, 2014, moved to Daytona, started to go to Daytona State College. And I had this dream in my heart. I ended up going to Guatemala in 2013, and I started to build a school. And we were talking a little bit about that before, Dr. Nayar, and we can kind of move into that, and I'll show everyone the video so they can see what we're talking about. But that was the first time, I think, that I really started to understand like what loving people meant. Like I had never been outside of the country. I had never seen, I had never been in a different like culture, community, different than the United States. I never like broke the barrier. If you've never done that, I would highly encourage you to do so. But I remember when I went to Guatemala and we were building that school, and I remember the kids running around and just everybody's so happy. By the way, they had nothing.
I know.
They didn't have food. They
Abs-
like they are an incredible community. They're tight knit. They're a very family oriented culture. But in terms of like the stuff that we have here, they had very minimal. And I remember like looking introspectively into my heart. And I went there thinking that I was going to help them. I'm like, okay, let me go help them. Let me help them build a school. But they didn't realize the impact that they made on my heart. I'm like, okay, there's something inside of me that needs to change. I remember thinking like there was like a selfishness and there was ego and there's all these different things. It's just normal human stuff. And I remembered, I'm like, okay, now that I saw this, what can I do within me to start changing? So, anyways, I went back to Daytona State and was crazy enough to start this project called the Bottle School Project. And I remember, Dr. I don't know if I've ever told you this. I remember I was in my room and I was the night before I went to bed crying. Okay, we just started the project. I remember pitching this project and like being so excited about it. I'm like, guys, like let's build a school, like let's raise money, like let's raise $13,000. I remember everyone was looking at me. At that time I had hair. Okay. But I remember everyone was looking at this guy who actually had hair back then. And they're like, dude, what are you talking about? We don't build schools here. We do cupcake fundraisers. Like whatever you're talking about is just crazy. And I remember leaving that meeting and that night going to bed crying again, waking up the next morning. I'm just like so discouraged. And we ended up trying to do it, trying to raise money. And we're going like dollar by dollar. And I remember at one point I was ready to quit. I was like, I can't do this anymore. The pressure, the stress, and all that stuff. And I remember Pranav,
Yeah.
Pranav. Pranav was like, Mike, hold on. Let me introduce you to this guy I know. He's 6'10". Okay. By the way, let me show you guys these pictures. Do you see this picture right here? The one right below me, right there. Okay. He is 6'10". Okay. He he is 6'10". So I walked in not knowing what to expect. I walk into your office and you came running up, like shook my hand. And I remember that day you introduced me to Kelly Sastry at that time. I had no idea who that was. And then from there, we ended up raising about $30,000, which is crazy. Even now to look back and to see, what happened and how it happened and just like the faithfulness. But it all started with you believing in me. It all started with you believing in me. So from your perspective, from a mentorship perspective, and I guess this could go into, the first question that I'll ask you. What is it like to mentor a young man or woman? How can we approach that? How important is it? I know that you do it for a ton of people, but how important is it? How do you approach that? How do you mentor people? Because I wanted to quit. You took me, you basically took me under your wing and brought me with you. How do you do that? How do you do that well?
That's a very good question, and that's a good topic for everyone to know. Also, the mentoring is different than coaching. In
Mm,
coaching, the coach asks you to do what need to be done, whereas in mentoring, the mentor asks you what you want to do. See, that's the difference between coach and thing. Think of basketball. The coach will tell you how to do certain moves in order to get the basket, whereas a
yes.
mentor will simply say, "What do you want to do?" And mentors' attitudes have to be this, or attributes should be listen more and speak less. That's what mentors
Mm,
should do. And then the mentors should maintain honesty, integrity, and objectivity at all times. Then
mhm.
also the most important thing about mentors is take the focus away from the mentor. In other words, I should not sit around there and talk how great I am. I mean, then that
Mm,
is not the right mentor for you or anybody. So the mentor is not the key here. So take the focus away from yourself, the mentor, and
mhm.
then know the mentor's limitations. Then share your experience, not your opinion. In other words, you asked me about my experiences. You see, I don't have to tell my opinion about what you should do. That's a mistake. Then I'm not a mentor. You are not there to come and ask my opinion. You wanted experience. How did you? And that's what you asked me in the beginning question. What
Yes.
was your experience, growing
Mhm.
up? Very good question. See, that's why you are already inherently you can be a very good mentor to youngsters that you will talk. We'll talk about that later. I want you to mentor, anyone who you see needs mentoring, and
Mm.
then show the path to the mentee and leave at that fork and let the mentee, just like I have left you after I guided you as much as I can by listening to you. Then I said, Michael, it is you. You decide what you want to. I don't want you to be a doctor or engineer or airline pilot. I never said that. I said, do what you like the most and you will be successful. That is what mentors do.
Yeah. That's what I felt on from my perspective, just being in a mentee mentor relationship with you. I felt like you listened. And a lot of times it wasn't like I didn't even really um it wasn't our relationship always like asking for advice and stuff like that. There was a major part of that. I asked you for advice, I asked you for help, connections, relationships, all that stuff. There's no way that we would have built a school in Guatemala and raised the money if we didn't have our relationship. But
That's right.
most of the time, you listened and you cared about me. And more than anything else, there was like a belief. It was like sometimes you just need somebody to believe in you, to say like, "You know what?" I remember so many times, Dr. Nair, that you would look at me and you say, "Son, you're doing a good job. Keep going. Like, you're doing a good job. Like, even if it doesn't feel like it, keep going. Like, keep going. Don't quit. Persevere. Keep going." So, what would you what would you say to somebody right now? It's been a crazy year. It has been a
Yeah,
crazy year. It's been
yeah.
tough. COVID's been tough. What would you say to somebody who has been really struggling, has had a tough year? Maybe they lost their job. Maybe somebody that they know died because of COVID. Maybe it was just a very difficult year for family stuff. What would you say to somebody, even from like a mentor relationship? Like,
I,
what
I
would you speak to?
the first thing that comes to my mind is I know, especially at this time of the year, our nation is going through this COVID thing so bad. So many people have lost jobs and all that. And I'm saying to myself, one of the things that the people who lost the jobs, what they should try to do is to I call it the Rolodex, the old-fashioned thing. But you in your iPhone or something, look at all the contacts that you have kept so far in your life and say to yourself, you know what, I am not going to be afraid to call this person. Call the person who you know, and the first person may not be positive when he comes back in his answer. Call the second person who you know from years, whichever context that you met in lives before. You never know, one of them will say, you know what, come over, let us talk, let us find out whether I can place you somewhere or I can refer you to somebody. So reach out. That is the most
Mm,
important thing. When you are down,
mm,
not only because of COVID, but any time, any single time when you are down, try to reach out. Reach out to one, and if that one doesn't work out, reach out to another person. Always reach out. Never be alone. Never ever be alone, because you know
mm,
what? That is going to take you to depression level, which is much worse. And whereas if simply talking to somebody, and even if that person did not respond the way you want to, you have to learn to say to yourself, you know what, that was one attempt I made, let me make another attempt with another person. It may turn out to be good, and you know
mm,
what, one of them will, because that is the human nature. There will be somebody to help. So reach out. That is the key word.
mm. That's good. I love that. And it's sometimes you don't even realize how important or how much it meant to that person, because sometimes you never know where somebody's at, especially in a year
That's
like
right.
this year. It's like it's been absolutely insane and hard and difficult. And obviously the political just politically it's crazy. Like in life, it's crazy. We had the pandemic and people are losing their jobs, businesses are going under. It's just been a very difficult year. And so from your perspective, it's just as simple as reaching out, like
That's
reaching
right.
out,
That's right.
touching base with them.
And if I may, if you allow me to give, I'll give you one other example, and I think this is the right time to give that example. One of the Rotary Club meetings we had early in the 1980, 84 or something, 85 or no, maybe 89 or 90. I forgot the year. But one of the Rotary meetings, there was a speaker who was a young kid who went as an exchange student to Italy from Jacksonville and stayed 1 year there, learned Italian, and he's an African American kid. And he came back to States and he gave us a talk about his experience. And his experience was so moving that tears came to my eyes. I was sitting at the one of the chairs in the back row, and as he finished and he walked past me, you know what I did? Because I was so moved by this young kid's experience of bad experiences in life. I gave my business card to him and simply said, contact me. That's all I said. And he had to go back to Jacksonville. So he went back, right? And then 2-3 weeks later, I get an email saying, hey man, how are you doing? You said that you will help me. Help me. That was his style, right? That was his style. And
Yes.
I will tell the first name of him is Michael also. Okay. But so what happened was I said, I thought the email was so funny because, you don't address somebody like that. But he said, hey, what are you up to? You said you help me. So you help me. So I said, okay. I said, come over. So he came from Jacksonville to Daytona State College. And I took him, introduced to the president. I introduced to the vice president, everybody. And I asked him, come over. I will try to help you, mentor you, and let us see what you want to do in your life. And, it's a long story short. Even the vice president and myself, we all helped, chipped in, including an apartment we found for him, put the things for him to make things, food and everything. And he was the second Rotaract president of our club. And he's the one who started that program called, Rota Basket, where we collected the canned foods and stored in different buildings.
Yes.
He's the one. And Michael, after all these years, he just contacted me about, last month, and now we are connected again, just like you do, and what I'm saying is he made good. It's very, very sad story, but he really made good. And he reaches out to me now and he says exactly like you, and the same namesake like you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah. You know what I was thinking today? I was thinking about this interview, and I've been so excited all week, and just to see you, honestly, because we don't talk as much as we used to. Obviously, we're not in the same state anymore, and we don't go to the same college. But I was thinking today, where does your philosophy come from? Like this, a lot of you guys don't know Dr. Nayar. Dr. Nayar is the most happy-go-lucky. Like every time you see him, big hugs. You know what I mean? He's 6'10". Let me remind you, six 6'10". Okay. Like every time I saw him though, we would give a big hug and like, where does this cheerful, bubbly, happy, grateful spirit come from? Where does that philosophy come from?
I don't know how to answer that question, because maybe it is something from within. Maybe partly it is the upbringing of the family, being with 6 children, in a family where you grow siblings. So you will have your little sibling fights and fun things and all that. And so it could be, I always want to thank my parents, definitely, because I'm sure they have contributed to some extent, at least, if not 100%, the part of their attitude that one should develop to others, especially my mom, I would say that at this time. And then, of course, I think it is because when you suffer yourself, that's one of the things, Michael, I always tell everybody, obstacles and difficult times, very lot of people blame and complain and sit around and say, oh, what have I done wrong? You have done nothing wrong. What happened really is a situational thing, and it can change. Nothing is permanent. And one of the key to be happy is actually to learned this thing, that we started our discussion at 8 o'clock. That 8 o'clock is gone. You can never get that 8 o'clock right now back. So
Mm,
I'll give you an example. Suppose at that 8 o'clock, when we started this conversation, there was a mistake or something happened. You or I cannot start worrying about, oh my God, we started so bad. No, it is gone. You can never get that back ever. So you
mm,
have to live in the present. You don't know what is next in the another 5 minutes. But so learning to live in the present and
mm,
constantly thinking about that, saying that, even every day I may have something that it tells me that, oh my God, that happened. Then I will say to myself, but it happened. I can do nothing about it. Unless you can do something to change it, sure, you should do that. Otherwise, try to live in the present and always say to yourself, be happy. Happiness is a state of mind, and as they say, but it is also a matter of how you deal with the time.
yes.
So if you learn that, I think you can be happy. There's no reason why you should not be. And
Yeah, I
don't take it
remember.
seriously. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when um, we used to take walks. So we would on like I forget which day it was, but I remember we would go to the beach and we would just go there and
Yeah,
talk,
right.
right? And people would be like, "Oh my gosh," they're like, "That's his son. They look exactly alike." Like, little did they know that I taught you English. It's like it's crazy. Uh, but I just remember that there was always like a sense of gratitude, always.
Exactly.
Whenever I was with you, it was like we would talk about. You taught me that. I think that was the beginning stages of. I think that at the like the I would say the root of joy is like this grateful spirit. So like joy always comes from gratitude. It's like you get
Exactly.
joyful and you have like this bubbliness and like hugging people and reaching out to people. It's like when you're grateful, you start to have those things. And so have you always been have you always been like that? Have you always been like super grateful? I know you said like growing up, but is that something that like you had to train a little bit or did it come from the suffering piece of life or
Yeah, I think it came from both ways actually, but more so with more disadvantages and obstacles on my way. Once I got the career going, then all that little unemployment period of 3 years and all that, that taught me the greatest lesson in the world, because I
Mm,
was doing menial work at the same time, and then I go and teach part time in some community colleges in Washington, Virginia area, and then I worked at night on a medical lab, and basically I never had a sleep. I never had sleep at all. So for 3 years when I toiled like that, um, I had so much of hardship at that time. I never told even my wife. I kept it all myself, and then I just had that realization that made me a better person. So that's why
mm,
sometimes when you have obstacles, say to yourself that yes, keep that obstacles as a stumbling
yes.
stones. Yeah.
You know what I'm reminded of is so my family went through a very difficult, I would say a couple years, but more specifically there were a few like month period like 3 4 months where my younger brother was in and out of the hospital, struggles with mental illness stuff. And I remembered what it felt like to like wake up in a place where I didn't really recognize me. Like the Mike that's like happy or joyful and stuff like that. And at that time, I wouldn't have said that I was like depressed or I felt lonely and stuff like that. It's interesting that you were talking about earlier. Sometimes it's just somebody reaching out. I remember how much that meant to me. This was not, by the way, not like 5 years ago, 4 years ago. This was probably a year and a half ago that we went through a very difficult time, just in and out of the hospital, stuff like that. But I remember how important it was for me for somebody to reach out. And I remember for me to get out of that place, I had to start like actively being grateful. Like I had to be in this place of like, okay, like you said, living in the present. Sometimes it's hard though because the present kind of sucks. you know, like, so sometimes the present's like, oh my gosh, like coronavirus and all this stuff. But when you're able to detach from that, but I guess this is where I kind of wanted to land. And if I'll give you a second to think of a moment, so maybe if you could talk about a moment where you went through some suffering and like maybe like get really specific on a moment that like was really, really difficult for you. Because for me, I realize now on the other side of some of the most difficult times in my life, and hospitals and pain, and seeing my parents cry and seeing my younger brother cry and all that stuff, and me like trying to be strong but not feeling strong, and
Yeah,
having to go like shut the door and then cry by myself and then walk out.
right.
So, what did that produce in you when you went through those seasons of suffering? And then how did you like allow this gratitude to come in? Like, how did you do that?
Well, one particular incident is that, the night job that I used to do, when I come back, it was very late, and I didn't want to, I had only one car that time, and I didn't want my wife, she was working daytime, and so I didn't want her to come and pick me up. So I used to walk alone from the bus stop. I come by bus, and then in Maryland, and then I walk through a narrow road, and it was very dangerous because people come at late night, and there is no space for a sidewalk or anything, and so it was so scary that almost several times I got hit. I almost hit, and so that was scary. Then I reached
Mm,
out, I talked to somebody, one of my friends, and then he said, actually this really funny happened. He said, put on your jacket a shiny, reflector sign. And so I put a reflector sign on the back, and then I walked so that the cars that come can see the person walking ahead of time. It was such a dark alley that I had to go to my townhouse. So yeah,
mhm,
that was a scary moment. So that those are the things that taught me how to reach out when you are in trouble, and how to go through it. Uh, so I mean, it is tough, but you go over that. Share
mhm.
share your grief. Sometimes it is okay to, don't be afraid.
Yes, one of the scriptures I love, it says, "Suffering produces perseverance, perseverance produces character, and character produces hope." So it's oftentimes that like at our worst moments or our scariest moments or the most painful moments or the moments of suffering.
That's
And
right.
maybe you like watching this interview and you're going through a season right now where it's just like it's just been tough
Yeah,
and you can't really sugarcoat it. It's just like it's been hard and it's been depressing, and maybe you even feel like you've been in a season of like depression. And oftentimes when you're there, you don't want to like talk to anybody, you don't want to reach out, you don't want to say hi, like you don't want to be in community.
right,
I guess what I would encourage you to do, and what I've seen in Dr. Nayar, even in places where I was really discouraged, was to keep going,
yeah,
like to keep moving forward. And sometimes it's hard, and sometimes life is all about seasons.
right,
Right now, right now we are in the middle of winter, not only like in New England right now, but
yeah,
in like the grand scheme of things, we're in the middle of winter. And maybe you're in a winter season for your life, maybe you lost a job, et cetera, et cetera. What I would say is that it's a season. You got to keep moving forward, because at the end of that, at the end of the suffering season, what you're going to see is that there's going to be positive fruit. There's going to be things that you see within you, a
right.
gratefulness for like the present moment of like the good times, right? You can't appreciate the good times if you haven't gone through the bad times. And I think that you're a testimony to that, Dr. Nair.
Thank you.
So,
I think
I
you,
guess,
I think you give me too much credit for all these things. I'm just a very ordinary person, Michael.
but sometimes the ordinary is what makes you great. I remember being with I was talking to a friend of mine, and he actually led a couple campuses at a church, and he had a high level leadership position. And I asked him, I was like, what do you think it means to be great? Like, what does that mean to you? And he said, Mike, in order to be great, you have to do the boring things over and over and over. And he's like, it's not the like beautiful, like amazing moments. Like it's not like in the interviews, and it's not like when you're on a stage somewhere. It's not when you're speaking or giving a keynote. Those aren't the great moments. The great moments are when you're alone and you're
Yeah,
going through hard times, and you got to keep going. You got to keep grinding through it, and you have to keep moving forward. Um, I guess we'll end with this, because I think that this is the core of who you are. And from my perspective, and our relationship, and how you treated me, and how you believed in me, and stuff like that, um, it was always generosity. There was just this spirit of like, Mike, I'm going to buy you. What was the Jimmy John's?
pick up,
My,
pick up. What is that they call? Jimmy John's. Something they have a
like
connection.
the tagline, yeah, like
Yeah, they have a
yeah.
tagline.
Yeah, so it
Crazy,
was
something
always
like
like
that. Yeah,
so
freaking crazy or something.
yeah, freaky fast. Freaky
Freaking.
fast. Yes, freaky fast. We would go and he would never let me pay. He would never let me pay. He said, "You know what? This is you are my mentee. I care about you. I'm gonna." He was always been just this root of gratitude. I mean, generosity, excuse me, in his heart. So, what does that look like? Why have you been so generous throughout your life? Where does that come from within you? And then I guess part two of that would be, I'd love to talk about there was. I'll let you tell the story, but about your car, if you know what I mean. I would love for you to share that testimony of that experience. So I'd love to hear that.
I don't know. Well, you see, first of all, let me put it this way, Michael. No one. This is a quote from Theodore Roosevelt. He once said, "No one cares how much you know
Hmm.
until they know how much you care." And
Hmm.
I thought that was a very good statement to tell about just now what you said about generosity and all that. Um, we have to see others through our not only eyes but our heart, and then you will realize that uh, others have the same pleasures and pain as we have, but we don't realize that, and some of them express, some of them don't express. So that is where the generosity part of it comes. And as
Yeah.
for my car thing, I don't want to dwell on too much on that, but I mean, like I said, that student happened to come by, and it was a time when I also wanted to downsize myself, my living standards and things like that. So I was giving a lot of stuff to various charities, completely cleaned up the garage, and we had a storage place, clothes, books, and all that. And right now, I'm trying to put the photographs, albums into a digital fashion so that we can keep it much better. So we are downsizing, and so in that process, when he came from out of the blue, he called me and my student, and then uh, casual conversation while going, I said the downsizing also includes this car. I want, because I don't need two cars, because we need only one car now. There's no need to. And so he said, he came by a car, so I thought he has a car. So he said, no, that is my girlfriend's car, and so I would like to buy this. So I said, well, personally, I don't know, I can give you, just give whatever you want, if you wanted to, some as a courtesy, if you want to, like that.
Hmm.
So he said he will take the car, and that's how that car went. But that I don't make it as a big issue, because it's nothing. I mean, it's just you're doing somebody who is needing. It's a need for
Hmm.
him, because he has to go to work. So I asked him. He said, he goes to work with a girlfriend's car. So now that she's also going to school and all that. So I said, you know what, this would help you. And I mean, that's a very simple thing, Michael. This is not
Yes.
something that we need to
Yes. But
publish.
that's why I think that one of the things I love most about you is that you have like a spirit of humility about you. And so it's never, whenever you have like this, I think it's more of like the model, less than like the actual message of it. It's like when people look at what you do and simple things like that is simple to you, for most people it's not. It's like they don't think of like, okay, maybe I could just like do this something special for them, or be generous, or give. Like, you've always been the type of person that would give the shirt off of your back. And I think that at this point in your life, I think you just turned like 32 or something like that. You know what I mean? 6'10", just turned 32, has way more hair than me. So I think at this stage in your life, though, I think it's important for people to follow your model, because oftentimes the world is not a generous place, and it's not a loving place. And
You know,
those are the things that I learned from you. I learned that you don't always need to you don't always need to take. It doesn't always need to be about you. People don't even need to know about it too, which is why I kind of wanted to bring that up, because nobody would have even known about you giving, because that's the kind of person that you are. And so anyways, I just want to thank you so much for coming out, and for
thank you.
obviously investing into me. And I know that there's going to be a lot of people who just hearing your voice, almost like a fatherly voice in their life, or like their uncle, Uncle Dr. Nayar. The you know, this guy, right there. That kind of Uncle Dr. Nayar. I know that your words and your voice are gonna mean a lot to them. So anyways, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure. Definitely
Thank you.
enjoyed the conversation.
Thank
Um
you.
yes, let me see.
Stay
Let
happy
me
and stay healthy.
stay happy, stay healthy. Yes. I'm gonna see who's on next. All right, next week we will be interviewing Pastor Doug Wombolt. He is. I was just with him a few weeks ago. I'm super excited to. Actually, his son had an incredible influence on my life, and so we're gonna be interviewing him next week, same time, I believe. Yes, it's on Thursday the 8th, and so we'll see you then. But Dr. Nair, thank you so much for coming. Thank
Thank you.
y'all. Love you
Thank you.
guys. Thank you for
Yeah.
tuning in. We'll talk to you
Yeah.
soon.
Thank you. Bye.